25. You read faster with longer lines but prefer shorter. Although you prefer reading text that is separated into relatively narrow columns, you read faster if the text takes up the width of the whole page. 24. 7 plus or minus 2. Psychology tells us that you can only store between 5 and 9 chunks of information in your short-term memory at a time. A chunk, however, can consist of several pieces of related data. Consider your phone number. It has a country code, area code, and then 1 or 2 more sets of numbers. Although this can be over 14 numbers long, it's usually grouped into several chunks and therefore falls well into our short memory range. 23. You imagine things from above and tilted. If you ask someone to draw a glass, for the most part, they will draw it from the angle demonstrated here. But what is to stop them from simply drawing a circle? This would be a valid overhead view. The reason is that our brains, when left to their own devices, imagine objects in this format. 22. Most of your decisions are subconscious. Although you like to think that all of your decisions are carefully controlled and thought out, research tells us that most of our everyday decisions are actually subconscious. There is a reason for this though. Every second our brains are bombarded with millions of individual pieces of data, and because there is no way we can consciously sit through all of it, our subconscious mind, following certain rules of thumb, help us out. 21. You reconstruct your memories. Because we experience our memories as mini movies, we tend to think that our memories are stored away as complete little files, much the same way as a video on your computer's hard drive. This, however, is not the case. Every time you remember something, that memory is reconstructed by your mind. This leads to the obvious conclusion that no two recollections are ever the same. In fact, our memories change over time and can influence one another. 20. You can't multitask. Humans cannot multitask, at least not in the sense of the term we often use. While you can certainly walk around while talking to your friend, your brain can only focus on one higher level function at a time, which means you cannot think of 2 things at once. 19. Red and blue is hard on your eyes. Although they are used in numerous national flags, the colors red and blue are actually very hard on your eyes whenever they are directly adjacent. This is due to an effect known as chromostereopsis, which causes certain colors to pop out and others to recede. 18. You want more choices than you can process. In a study, researchers set up a tasting table with 6 varieties of jam. Then, they altered this table with a much larger selection of 24 jams. What they found was that although more people stopped for a taste at the 24 jam table, almost 6 times as many made a purchase at the 6 jam table. This can be attributed to the fact that although we think we want more, our brains can only handle so much input at a time. 17. The ability to delay gratification starts young. Evidently, the ability to delay fulfilling your desire for immediate gratification as a kid leads to more success in school, better grades, and a greater ability to deal with stress and frustration. 16. Your mind wanders 30% of the time. Are you a daydreamer? According to scientists, we all are, at least 30% of the time. Some of us, though, wander a bit more than others. 15. Others are more easily influenced than you. Known as the third person effect, this psychological phenomenon tells us that while we acknowledge the effect of advertising and other influences upon our peers, we deny them upon ourselves. In reality, though, many advertisements subconsciously affect your mood, attitude, and desires. 14. You can see things differently than the way you perceive them. According to a research study at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are, the only important thing is that the first and last letter be in the right place. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. 13. Your brain is just as busy when you sleep. Your brain is just as active during sleep as it is while you're awake. So what's going on during sleep then if your brain isn't just shutting down? Well, scientists hypothesize that during the night your brain is consolidating information and making new associations. 12. Groups are bad at making decisions. Labeled groupthink by psychologists, this effect essentially tells us that more heads does not necessarily mean more smarts, as large groups of people tend to make decisions based on hyper-emotionalism. 11. Groups are also easily swayed. Not only are groups poor at making decisions, they are also easily swayed by dominant self-serving personalities who manage to play off the group's spirit. 10. Anticipation trumps experience. Unfortunately, our perception of a future event is usually far overblown, and many times the anticipation leading up to an event is more exciting than the event itself. 9. On average, it takes you 66 days to form a habit. We all have them, some good and some bad. But just remember, the next time New Year's rolls around, if you can make it to day 67 with your resolutions, then you're probably in the clear. 8. More people means less desire to compete. In one interesting study, scientists found that students scored higher on standardized tests when there were less people in the room. Evidently, when there are less people competing, you are more motivated to perform because there is a greater chance of coming out on top. 7. Repetition physically changes your brain. Every time you access or store information in your brain, electrical impulses fire between neurons, strengthening old connections and forging new ones. It's the result of these new circuits forming that causes your brain to physically change. 6. You can sustain a high level of attention for approximately 10 minutes. You might think that you're really good at paying attention in class, but the truth is that your attention span maxes out at around 10 minutes, even if it's something that interests you. 5. Your most vivid memories are often flawed. Known as flashbulb memories, whenever something traumatic happens in your life, your brain takes an emotionally charged photo. The problem is that a lot of the details will be completely wrong, and several studies have shown that the strong emotions associated with the memory often skews your recollection. 4. You choose and vote for the first person on the list. Of course, we know you don't always do this, but people generally favor the first item in a list regardless of whether it's a menu or a ballot. In fact, it has been shown that having your name listed in the middle of a ballot decreases your chances of winning by 2.5%. 3. You overestimate your reaction to future events. You are terrible at predicting the future. To be more precise, you are terrible at estimating your reaction to events in the future. It has been shown that people tend to believe positive events like landing the perfect job or getting married will make them happier than they really will. And the same goes for negative events. 2. You have a friend limit. While you may be a social media fiend with 4,000 friends on Facebook, the hard truth is that you don't really have that many friends, at least not close friends. Psychologists and anthropologists will tell you that the maximum number of close ties a human can have hovers somewhere between 50 and 150. And 1. You blame a person's behavior on their personality unless the person is you. Think back to the last time you got cut off in traffic. Did you say to yourself, "Man, what an idiot"? Or did you think, "Gee, she probably had a bad day"? Chances are that you went with the former. In psychology circles, this is known as the fundamental attribution error, and it essentially states that while we blame the behavior of others on their internal attributes, we blame our own on the external. I had no choice, I had to cut her off to avoid a collision. Liking our lists? Be sure to subscribe by pressing the button at the top corner of your screen. And if you're still itching for more awesome lists, click on these nifty thumbnails created by yours truly, and be sure to show us some love by liking, sharing, and commenting.